Friends, your interest in our course on European Union and World Affairs is appreciated. I'm sure you might have already studied some of the units from the course materials sent to you, or you will be preparing to study some of them. It's a matter of great honor for us that we have with us today Michael A. Roop, who is Administrator on the Committee of Foreign Affairs and Subcommittee on Human Rights of the European Parliament. You might have read or you will be reading about the European Parliament, European Commission, etc., etc. But with the presence of Michael here, it is be a great help and also a sort of incentive to you to get a first-hand information about the various institutions through which European Union works, functions and performs its duties. As you might have already read, that European Union is a very unique institution, or whatever we call, because one cannot give it a name. It's neither a country, it's neither a federation, it's neither a confederation, but still working on very well in this present day world affairs as what you call a regional group. And how this regional group works through various institutions will be our concern today. Michael, it is of great interest to students to know that starting from 6 countries, today European Union consists of 27 members, and the process of this what we call development is still going on. More and more countries are still waiting to join European Union. Now, such a complex configuration of countries, and also having shedded some sovereignty, but at the same time most of the countries maintaining their own sovereignty, I mean, at the same time working together. So they would like to know from you, what are the major institutions through which European Union functions and discharges its functions?
Yes, well, this is indeed a very important question, because the European Union, as you said, is a very specific animal. We call it in a Latin way that the European Union is a sui generis institution. And as you rightly said, we started with 6 countries and moved gradually to 9, to 10, to 12. Then 15 joined, and in the last batch we had 10 and then another 2 countries joining, so we're now at 27. This proves that the European Union is very attractive as an international organization for outside countries, and you rightly said we have many more lining up to join. We are currently negotiating with 2 countries, that is that we should have edited. The first one is Croatia, and the second one with which we are negotiating is Turkey. And we have another candidate country, which is the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, and this one is waiting to start negotiations as well. In addition, we have many other countries in the Western Balkans which are waiting for this as well. So the Union is attractive, and some of its attraction lies in the way that the institutions work, because the European Union is very efficient in creating good policies for the European citizens and for the member states. Basically, we have 3 main institutions of the European Union. The one is the European Parliament, where I'm currently working. Then we have the Council of the European Union, which is the representation of the member states to the European Union. And then the third is the European Commission. The European Parliament is relatively easy to explain. It is a parliament like any other parliament. We have elections to it, common European elections in all European member states. The Council of the EU, as I said, is the representation of the member states, where all 27 member states have their seats. And the European Commission is something like the executive of the European Union. It is not a full government, but it is the executive which initiates laws, European Union legislation, specifically the directives and the regulations, as well as some other legal order that we have in the Union. I'm sure all the students will have already become familiar with that from the course material. We have several presidents of all these institutions, logically, also in the European Union. Each institution has a head, is chaired by a country, so not by a specific person. For each 6 months, a new country takes over, always in the first half of the year and then the second half of the year. In the EU institutions, and just to make it clear to the students how these institutions work, the European Parliament has over 700 members. These come from all 27 member states. They are divided by seats per member state. I come later to more detail on this. The European Parliament has, together with the Council, the legislative power. So the European Commission proposes laws, and then the two chambers, in a sense, the European Parliament and the Council, decide on these laws. They have to agree on these laws together. The European Parliament also shares with the Council the budgetary power, meaning the EU budget, the way that the EU gets money from the member states, and then the way it spends money for each particular policy field. The European Parliament also, like the classic power of Parliament, has parliamentary control of the other institutions. So the European Parliament calls on commissioners to report on the implementation of policy, be it the agricultural policy, be it environmental policy, can criticize and make proposals as well.
Michael, many times students ask us, this process of accountability of commission to this what we call parliament, is there a regular procedure for their accountability as question hour in British Parliament or something like that?
This kind of precise questioning of commissioners has increased over the years. The European Parliament now, with its different committees, is regularly inviting commissioners, and they usually come every 2 or 3 months to report on the implementation of policy, and then the different parties and the different members from the different parties make suggestions, criticize, give ideas, and ask for answers. Often very, very precise answers. The European Parliament also has a system of written questions, so the Commission is usually bombarded with detailed questions on all kinds of different policy fields, and has to answer to individual parliamentarians in a written form. Give numbers, give figures, say why a project has not been implemented in this or that field, and so on and so forth.
Another very important question from the students' point of view, which they keep on asking, because they have never watched elections across the borders. So what they want to know from us many times is that whether there are political parties pan-Europe, or this is in each country, each political parties fielding the candidates, or there are common parties, political parties, which are across the borders and they field candidates and they contest the elections. Because they have not watched elections in a multi-country situation. They have watched elections only being held in India or any other single country. So what do you think they should know about that?
Well, it is of course the ideal that we would have European elections and European parties contesting the elections across borders of the European Union. The reality today is that we, unfortunately, we say, do not yet have, although we have elections pretty much at the same time in all countries, in each country it's more the national parties who say we have a good candidate for the European Parliament. But of course in Germany it's nearly always a German, in Italy it's always an Italian. There are some first small developments of a German born who lived in France for a long time and now is a member for a French constituency, but these are fledgling developments. It is developing, but it's not yet quite there. At the moment, most of the European elections are still fought within a national media context, but it's fought on European Union topics.
And what is the level of cooperation and coordination among them while working in the Parliament?
Of whom? Of
these MPs.
Of the MEPs.
Coming from different countries and different parties.
That is a very strong interaction. In the European Parliament, what is quite significant, and that is a big difference to, for example, the Council, where the member states are individually represented. In the European Parliament, really all members from several countries who are in a political group, which we call political groups, work together. And here the dividing line is really very much according to, as it should be, political parties. That means that the conservatives from Germany, from France, from Italy work together and vote together on many things that have to be voted on. The Social Democratic Party has members from all member states, and these members really work together. When we have votes in the European Parliament, you have a clear political group approach beforehand, and they all decide together, and then you usually have the votes quite clearly. All conservatives from 27 member states vote in favor of something, and nearly all social democrats from other parties vote against it, or the other way around. It's very clear.
Anything else would you like to tell our students about Parliament?
Absolutely. Of course, it is quite interesting, and you will see some graphs on the seats per member state. We have, very interestingly, logically also, a clear difference between the seats that each individual member state has been given. Of course, Germany, as the biggest member state, has the most seats. It's currently 99 seats, and France, then United Kingdom, Italy have 27 seats. Spain a little less, 50. I don't want to go through all the list, but it's quite clear that, for example, the smallest member states, Malta and Luxembourg, have only 5, respectively 6 seats. What is important to know here is that the weighting of the numbers of voters is very much in favor of the smaller states. The small states are proportionally much higher represented than the big states. This is an inbuilt bias towards the small states because, of course, bigger states always have bigger power.
To avoid a big brotherly attitude.
Exactly. We do not want in the European Union that all the big member states basically take over the Union. The smaller member states, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovenia, should still be represented and should have sufficient voice in the important politics. Otherwise, you get always this approach that people say, the big member states do everything. The European institutions in everywhere are catering towards the small states as well, so that they have their voice heard. That's very important.
And how does this Council of Ministers comes out from this Parliament?
The Council of Ministers is not coming out of the Parliament. It's basically on the other side of Parliament. The Council of Ministers is determined by the governments of the member states, of each individual 27 member states. This Council of Ministers basically has one representative in each of the ministerial configurations. Because, to be clear, the Council of Ministers as such doesn't exist as one council. It exists as several councils depending on the issue. You sometimes have all the agricultural ministers sitting together from all 27 member states. They decide about agricultural issues. You have the environment ministers sitting together. That's the environmental council. You have the foreign affairs council sitting together. They decide on foreign affairs. So each member state then sends a representative, usually minister or state secretary, to sit together as 27 with a commission and with the presidency of the council on the one side.
And how will you explain the role and functions of European Commission?
The role and the function of the European Commission is vital in the European Union. Many people argue, many scientists argue, that it is because of the European Commission and its strong role in the European Union that we have such a good and positive development of the Union over the last 50 years, basically. The Commission has a unique power for proposing new legislation and new policies. This is in nearly all areas. It is the European Commission which makes all the proposals, and it has the monopoly for proposals. The Commission makes proposals in a way that then the other institutions can discuss, but if the Commission doesn't make a proposal, then nothing works in this area. So the Commission is very strong, and it can also, when it doesn't like certain how discussions go on certain policy fields, withdraw proposals and say, I do not want that these policies go in a certain direction. So a strong Commission, which is also politically always a question, can be very decisive for the European Union because it can guide policy fields in all the areas. In the Commission, just to talk about the composition of it, we have, of course, 27 commissioners. Okay. Each member state has a commissioner, but, this is very important, the commissioners are supposed to be independent, meaning they are not representing their country. This is for the Council to do. They serve in the interest of the European Union. In their work, they should take into account only the interest of the European Union overall, of all its citizens. They should not, this is very clearly set out in the treaties, they should not take instructions from anybody and are sort of the guardian of the treaties. We call it the guardianship of the treaties that the European Commission has.
Have there been any complaints, or we can say the problems that these commissioners, in spite of being independent experts, being influenced, or somebody trying to influence on behalf of government of their respective countries?
Of course, this is a regular reality. Of course, we are in a political process.
That's right.
Commissioners are also not, let's say, independent experts only. They are political appointees from the member states.
That's right.
That means, of course, also that in the discussion of the College of Commissioners, as we call it, the 27, and in all the discussions leading up to it, individual members of the Commission also bring in the specific expertise that they have from, as we call it, the country they know best. We don't call it the country they belong to because they're Europeans, but the country they know best is, of course, very important. And this means also that, of course, a French commissioner, when a specific item is discussed, will also say, I know that France would like X and Y. But in the discussion, this is taken as a point of information. It doesn't mean that this commissioner should go all the way to defend the interest of France. On the contrary, this is shunned in the Commission, and it is not the done thing at the college level. The European interests are first.
Would you like to tell our students something about the process the decisions are made in these institutions?
Absolutely. We have a very nice graph where we can show how the legislative process works, which we now call the ordinary legislative procedure. You will see in that graph that the European Commission makes the proposal. This Commission proposal is adopted by a majority in the College of the Commissioners. Discussions about this in the College are confidential. It's not supposed to be known whether it's a unanimous adoption of a proposal by all commissioners or whether it's a very slim majority in favor. This Commission proposal is adopted, and then it is given first to the European Parliament and in parallel, basically, to the Council, and they then start their internal deliberations. We have a first reading in the European Parliament. Reading in the European Parliament works like that. After the Commission proposal is given to Parliament, it is looked upon what kind of proposal it is. If it is on environmental policies, then it is given to the Committee on Environment. The Committee of Environment takes the proposal, gives it to one rapporteur, as we call it, a French word for the draftsman. Yeah. And this rapporteur then makes a legislative report and says what he likes, what he doesn't like. This is then voted in committee level, then goes to plenary, and plenary, meaning all the MEPs together, come up, vote on this proposal, and this is the result of the first reading. This is then given to Council. The Council looks at it. It has already started deliberations, of course, internally in their working groups, looks at the proposal, and then this proposal is given a common position by Council, meaning that all the member states together say, well, we don't like this from the proposal, we would have amendments in this and this area, and so on and so forth. At this stage, it is possible already to make a deal between Parliament and Council. It is possible, which we would call a first reading agreement, that the Council looks at what the European Parliament has proposed and says, well, we more or less agree, and then the Council can adopt simply what the European Parliament has adopted, and then this becomes a regulation or a directive, for example. However, very often it is the case that the member states are not in agreement with the European Parliament. That happens in politics. They come back and the Council position is very different. And then the European Parliament goes through the same thing again. The committee looks at that, makes a proposal, it comes to plenary, and the European Parliament makes another proposal. Sometimes here there are some discussions between Council and Parliament, and the Parliament tries to incorporate some things from the Council, but maybe not all of it, and then sends it all back to the Council with a new position. The same happens in the Council. Council looks at what Parliament says and comes up with an idea. We could then have a second reading agreement, meaning the Council could say, okay, first time around we didn't agree, now we do agree, and that would be the end of the process. The directive would become law. But at very critical issues, sometimes what happens is that the European Parliament Council, even after the second reading, cannot agree. And then what happens is that they call a conciliation committee. The conciliation committee is basically 27 representatives from the member states and 27 members of the European Parliament sit together, often till late at night, and really bargain and really negotiate the nitty-gritty of a proposal. When they come up and agree on a final text, then this text goes to the Parliament and goes to the Council. It cannot be changed anymore. And each of them agree. If one of them doesn't agree, the whole procedure lapses and we go back to square one. Then it's not enacted. This is what we call the ordinary legislative procedure.
Michael, I'm very happy that you have given in detail about the constitution of these institutions, the way they work, the way they make decisions. I think finally our students will like to know from you the role these institutions have played and the challenges they are facing in the future.
Well, yes, I had the luck of working in two of them. I have been working in the European Parliament, so I know Parliament very well, but I have also been working in the European Commission, so I know both these institutions from the inside. What is quite interesting is that all institutions continuously in the European Union go through changes because, and you have that in your course material on the different treaties, each different treaty gives some new prerogatives, gives some new powers or takes some powers away and distributes the political competence between the institutions. What we have seen in the past is that through all the different treaties, Maastricht, Amsterdam, Nice, and the latest treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, which just came into force on 1st December 2009, that the European Parliament has become more and more powerful. Initially, the European Parliament was just an assembly of members with very few powers, usually only consultation powers. The Council could decide to ignore it. Today, this is no longer the case. The Council of Ministers and the European Parliament are now equal in all areas, budgetary, in all policy fields, and so on and so forth, meaning that the Council has started to take European Parliament very seriously indeed. There are very often discussions between Council representatives, between the Member States and the European parliamentarians on different policy fields, and this really has politicized, in a positive word, the work of the European Union. Also, it has made European elections become more important because really the members make policies. The European Commission is basically also getting more important all the time. It's a simple matter of fact. In all treaties, the European Union has been given more and more powers, more and more competences. In the latest treaty, for example, we have received powers in the European Union to do energy policy for the European Union. That wasn't there before. The Lisbon Treaty has given energy policy as a possibility. Beforehand, there was nothing. So it's the European Commission, with its over 20,000 officials, who is the heart and the heartbeat of the European Union, where the competence of all the policy fields lie. And so the European Commission, together with the European Parliament, has become more and more important all the time.
Thank you, Michael. I think our students will definitely have benefited from this talk you have given to them about the various European institutions of European Union spread across the Europe, working from different centers, different places, coordinating with each other, the peculiar way they make decisions, and ultimately also the successful manner in which they have been working, which is definitely some sort of an example for other regional arrangements if they can learn something from our route. And being in South Asia, I think the students are always keen, they keep on asking that can SAARC learn some lesson from the European Union experience, and I think it will be of great use to them. And if students have any problems or anything else, in the absence of Michael, I'll always be there to them to discuss, and they can always talk to me about that. Thank you, Michael, once again.
It was
for
a
being
pleasure.
with us. Thank you.